How soon after your bankruptcy is over will you be able to finance a car? I'm Jonathan Ginsberg. I'm an Atlanta area personal bankruptcy attorney representing clients in Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 for well over 25 years. And an obvious question people have is, I go into bankruptcy when it's over, how quickly can I finance a car? Because, vehicles get damaged, there's maybe a need for another vehicle. Well, the answer really depends on whether you go into a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. Chapter 7, as you may know, is a discharge of debt. So when you file a 7, you file it, you go through a hearing, there's a certain waiting period that creditors have to file objections. Most of the time they do not. The whole thing is over in about 5.5 months, something like that. And at that point, once it's over, you're certainly free to go try to finance a car. In fact, you could, in theory, finance a car the day after you file Chapter 7, because now that's new debt. I wouldn't recommend that. That doesn't look very good and potentially could cause some problems with the trustee. But certainly when the case is over, if you can find a finance company to offer financing, you're free to go try to finance a car. You'll find you'll pay a higher rate. You probably need to get a cosigner, but you can certainly finance a car pretty much immediately after your Chapter 13 case is over, getting close to being over. And my experience, by the way, is it normally takes about a year or so after your Chapter 7 is filed before you start to see your credit come back to the point where you get competitive rates. So Chapter 7 is not that big of a deal as far as financing a vehicle, especially if you have a cosigner. Chapter 13 is a different animal because it's a 5-year plan most of the time. Could be 3 years, but usually it's 5 years. So when you go into a 13, once the case is over, if you make it, and I would tell you only about 30% of the time our Chapter 13 case is successful, once the case is over again, you're free to do whatever you'd like. You can finance a car if you can find a lender that's willing to do it. Many times the fact that you've made Chapter 13 payments for 5 years will help reestablish your credit, and you shouldn't have a lot of trouble finding a lender that will finance your vehicle. The bigger problem is trying to finance a vehicle within the Chapter 13, meaning that you're a year or two into the 13, your car craps out, you need to get another vehicle. You've got to go through a lot of hoops to get permission to finance a car while you're in a 13, as well as finding a lender that will do that. That is a bigger problem, and I'll talk about that in a different video. But again, it is possible. You have to get court permission to do so, but it's possible. I think really the bigger issue as far as being legally able to finance is one thing. The bigger problem is finding a lender who will finance you, because a lot of lenders are just very uncomfortable with the idea of financing somebody who's actually in an active bankruptcy case. Once it's over, not as big of a deal. So I tell you, the biggest problems we have with financing vehicles would be somebody in a Chapter 13 repayment plan. They're a year or 2 or 3 into it. They need to replace a car, and we've got to go through the hoops to get permission. But then when you get permission, who is going to actually finance it, and can you get it done at a reasonable rate? So there's a lot of elements to this particular issue, but I think the biggest one is finding a lender who's willing to do it at a reasonable type of rate. The legalities we can take care of, or they'll take care of themselves, but really the practical issue is the one I would be most focused on. Hope you found this helpful. My website is atlanta-bankruptcy-attorney.com. My phone number is 770-393-4985. I'm happy to help you any way I can regarding Chapter 13 or Chapter 7 here in the Atlanta area. My name, again, is Jonathan Ginsberg, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks a lot.